Hi, my name is Beverly Buncher, and I'm the founder and creator of the BALM method of family recovery. I believe the best chance an individual with a use disorder has to survive and thrive comes from the healthy involvement of their family in the recovery process. In today's throwaway culture, struggling loved ones are often cast aside as non-productive or not carrying their weight, or an embarrassment to the family. In fact, the words "get rid of them" are commonly spoken about a person with a use disorder. And when the family buys into the stigmatizing approach, the fabric of society begins to shudder with reverberations near and far. For a family to get to the point of healthy involvement can be a real challenge. My husband, Alan, a retired treatment center CEO, often shares that he sat in many clinical meetings discussing the patient, and comments like, quote, "the family is sicker than the patient" are commonly heard. As lost as the individual is, the families are often even more lost without any help for them to change. The weekly hour or two that families get a week while their loved one is in treatment doesn't even touch their need for help. And when you couple that with the fact that only 10% of individuals with SUD ever get to treatment, you can see the crisis affecting society. And that's why I developed the BALM program. Imagine a fire, not a kindling fire, not just smoke and embers, but a wildfire, burning high and far, destroying leaves, branches, trunks, whole trees, burning homes to the ground, and everyone unfortunate enough to not get out in time. That fire is not only burning in one area, but in many, all across this beautiful land of ours, decimating entire communities, wiping out an entire generation of potential brilliance and beauty, leaving only waste and destruction in its path. The fire we're imagining here is not a forest fire, and its main target is not trees. It's a fire that's been burning for decades, culminating in the loss of 72,000 drug overdoses in 2017. And we're not even talking about the ongoing destruction that alcohol and other active use disorders wreak on the everyday lives of those afflicted and their loved ones. Just as a forest fire starts with grass and trees and then moves on to eliminate overgrowth, homes, people, and whole communities, so too the scourge of substance use disorder, or what I will refer to as SUD, starts in individual lives, moving out into families, neighborhoods, communities, and reaching far and wide until there's hardly a family, school, court, workplace, town, or city left untouched by the resulting overdose epidemic or by addiction itself. My family was touched by SUD, and specifically opioids, many years ago when I was a newlywed. Yes, I married a wonderful man who was also a man with an active substance use disorder. And I knew it was active. Along the way to our engagement and subsequent marriage, friends and families told me to run. "There's no future in it," one said. "You can do better," said my mother. "Let him down easy," my dad added. "After all, he's such a nice guy." But I wouldn't hear anything of it. I was young and in love. I was in Al-Anon. I could surely handle this man's problem. Truthfully, I had no idea what I was getting into. 6 months and many tear-filled nights later, I watched my new husband deteriorating right before my eyes, and I thought, what on earth have I gotten myself into? My husband's going to die, and there's nothing I can do about it. I would go to Al-Anon meetings where the other young people in the meeting were all separated or divorced from their loved ones. At this point, They told me to get out before it's too late. I was starting to question my own resolve. Every day I played the mind game of, should I stay or should I go? A friend shared a calendar exercise with me that I adopted and teach to my clients and students to this day. It was life-changing, especially back then when we had paper calendars. I wrote, "How are things now?" on the calendar after every 3-month period. And I committed to not leaving until I had lived 1 year of true commitment, no matter what. That exercise taught me that time mattered. Right before my eyes, my husband was getting worse and worse. And again, the people in my support group told me there was nothing I could do to help but take care of myself. I heard what they said, but I couldn't just wait it out. As an educator, I was curious, and I was sure there was an answer in there somewhere. As a person who believed in the loving message of the original Al-Anon members, I was sure they wouldn't have left their husbands. But I also knew that if things didn't change, it would soon be unbearable for me to stay. Then I found it, a little book from the original Al-Anons about married life with an alcoholic. Written in the 50s, it was outdated in so many ways. But I found treasure buried in that book, and within 3 months of following its directions, my husband entered recovery and our beautiful life together began. I tell the whole story of our life in recovery and through relapse and back into recovery again in my book, Balm the Loving Path. But what I want to get across in our talk today is the importance of the basic ideas that have guided my marriage, my coaching practice, and the Balm family recovery method that is now used around the world by families, coaches, and treatment centers. This new understanding that transformed our lives started with the Al-Anon Cs. You didn't cause your loved one's addiction. You can't control it. You can't cure it, but you don't have to contribute to it. The first 3 freed me up. Phew, it wasn't my fault. I'm not the one responsible to control it, and I can't force a cure. But when Al-Anon said, "But you don't have to contribute to it," I wanted to know more. I wanted to know what not to do, and more importantly, what to do. Over the years, as I kept studying, talking to old timers, including my wonderful sponsor, Dawn, who had figured it out, and living through family recovery and relapse with my husband, I solidified what not contributing meant. And you can see it on this slide, changing my expectations, going on living my own life, planning all responses to situations in advance. No attempts at rational conversation with a person deeply under the influence. No cleaning up rooms or consequences afterwards. And when he awoke from his sleep following active use, my watchwords became love, acceptance, facts, concern, empathy, dignity, and respect. As I researched, continued to live the relationship with my husband, and began working with families as a life coach, I turned Al-Anon's 4th C, which by then was really hardly heard at meetings anymore, on its head. And I added 3 more, namely the 4th C. You can contribute to your loved one's recovery, and we'll show you how. The 5th C, you are connected to your loved one at a level deeper than their SUD. Let's take away that stigma after all. The 6th one, you can learn to communicate. You can learn to communicate effectively with your loved one. It's definitely possible, and we'll show you how. And number 7, you are always a choice. These ideas lay the groundwork for a life of healthy love and connection for the family impacted by a loved one's use disorder. At this point, the family is beginning to walk the loving path, but often the work is only just begun. Eventually, I came to call all this and so much more balm. Be a loving mirror. So we talk about walking the loving path to family recovery. And you may ask, what does it mean to walk the path of love? This is one of my favorite topics. To walk the loving path is to live your life from the deepest part of yourself, the part that isn't angry or jealous or frightened or resentful, even when the events in your life could indicate that those emotions are justified. The path of love calls you to a journey that is forgiving, peaceful, and joyful. No, it's not about being nice or sticking a fake smile on your face as you endure. We've all been there, haven't we? Rather, the path of love calls us to see beyond any behaviors our loved one is exhibiting, guiding us to see them and ourselves in the best light, as beings of potential, able to overcome even the most difficult of situations. Walking the path of love is walking with forgiveness and understanding in each moment. Forgiveness of the effects of a malady that has warped the reality of the family's life. Understanding how hard it is to be forgiving and forgiving ourselves for that and for any mistakes we make along the way. The loving path is a path grounded in each moment. This path is one based on present time, not in the past or the future. It sits firmly in each moment with hope for a better day and an attitude of letting go of past wrongs or hurts and worries of a future that may never come. I remember when my husband was using so many years ago, and I would call my sponsor and I would cry about what had happened and I would worry about what was coming. And she would sigh and I'd hear her kind of laughing on the other end of the phone. And she'd say, "My sweetheart, stay in present time." And I'd say, "What do you mean stay in present time? Oh, the present time is awful." She'd say, "Not if you breathe it in. Try it. Stay in present time, in this moment. Not a care in the world." And when I said, "But that son of a gun," my dear, your only obligation to another human being is to be a loving person. Be a loving person. I really, really wanted to kill my husband. And those of you who understand that I don't mean it literally, or do I? It was a very rough road. And what had to happen for me, and what I've found has had to happen for the many families that we've helped in the Balm, is there has to be an attitudinal shift that takes place. In the Balm, we have 12 principles, and the first 4 of the Balm principles point the way to this attitudinal shift. You know, when I first started working with families, I told them, do self-care, be loving, set boundaries, get support. And they said, "Why should I? This isn't my problem." Aha, attitudinal shift time, but it is your problem. If your loved one has a problem with use disorder, you have a crucial role to play in their recovery. And guess what? Your loved one can change. So many come to us hopeless, and we say, there's always hope. As long as there's life, there's hope. And change happens in stages. We'll be talking about that more in a little while. And then so many families hold such a tight fist on what's happening. They're so upset about it. They just have to have it their way to make it happen right. And we say you can let go of obsessing and control without giving up or giving in. In other words, don't let go of the person. Don't let go of helping them. Let go of your obsessive attitude, of your need to have it your way, and be open to learning what really works so many times. And of course, there's no guarantee that your loved one will get well, but you can be your loved one's best chance at recovery. And we'll show you how. When families learn these 4 principles, they begin to have an attitudinal shift that is essential for walking the loving path. And of course, this is easier said than done. But it's not impossible. If it's the first time your loved one has sought help, you may be going to the treatment center and saying, fix them, and thinking that when they get out, they're going to be better. If this isn't your first ride on the merry-go-round, then chances are you know that it takes a lot more than treatment. Treatment's a beginning, not an end. So what's your role in that? And what if there's resistance? On the loving path, we deal with resistance with patience and love. After all, this path is an inner process. In time, we find that as families master the essential tools and skills of family recovery, they often begin to walk together with each other with respect and faith in the process. We notice that the more they learn, the more the family members are able to bounce back, so that if their loved one has a reoccurrence, it doesn't have to become a long reoccurrence fanned by the flames of family upset. Rather, the family walking the loving path sees what's happening, does what they need to do to be their loved one's best chance, and the shift in the loved one can happen much more quickly as well. We believe it takes time to learn these critical skills. That's why, at the Balm, for instance, we provide a year of practice for our families, often leading to their own lifetime of walking the loving path with grace and ease. A deep dive into the loving path is what's called for. We call the process Be a Loving Mirror, and we say it's the journey and the destination, because as you walk it, you become more and more loving, more and more peaceful. And in the end, in the destination, there's love and there's peace. This deep dive into transformation it takes to walk the loving path can be found in the 7 steps to be a loving mirror. And today, we'll look at the first 3 steps, which are the steps to self-transformation. The 7 steps themselves have 3 steps to self-transformation and 4 steps to the transformation of your relationships, your ability to communicate. We do deal with that, but this talk is really about you walking the loving path and how to do so from the start. So we're going to look at those first 3 steps, and then we'll look at some tools along the way. Step 1 is the step of mindfulness. The way we say it is, be the peace you wish to see in the world. We value and nurture mindfulness in ourselves and our families, knowing that the road from chaos to sanity really does start with an awareness of the peace already there within each of us. Step 2 states, Observe what you see around you objectively. This is about seeing behavior that would normally take you off your game and simply observing it without any opinion about it. Step 2 is actually an outgrowth of having a daily mindfulness practice, which is something we greatly, greatly encourage you to have. Step 3, become aware of your inner emotional landscape without judgment. This is the reality step that recognizes that just because you've developed a peaceful practice, that doesn't mean that things you see won't upset you. In step 3, you begin to recognize your humanity and put tools in place to calm your inner waters along the path. Of course, each of these steps are replete with so many tools, exercises, and skills. So today I'd like to share a few to help you on your loving path. If you attended the Family Recovery Conference last fall, you're familiar with the clear, unclear chart because I taught a class on it. So if you have access to that, please get it out after you listen to this and re-listen to it again if it'll help you. If not, here's a quick review. So what you do is you choose a topic that you care about, a problem you have, something you're concerned about, something that's murky for you, such as, what's really going on with my loved one? And then you take out a chart like this, you can make one yourself, and you write down all the things you're absolutely sure of. That goes in the clear column. You must know them from the bottom of your heart in order for them to be clear. And anything you're not yet 100% sure of goes under unclear. The thing about this is if you say, I think, at the beginning of a session, of a question or statement in the clear column, take it out and put it in unclear. Anything you think is unclear. You have to know it for sure for it to make it to the clear column. The talk will give you the nuances of the tool. And I recommend that if this is something you really want to learn how to do, that you listen to that talk. It's a very deep and powerful tool to gain clarity as you walk the loving path. Self-care, of course, is a critical component of any family recovery program. In BALM, we have a two-prong approach: get your life back and help your loved one get theirs back. So many people get stuck in one or the other. Either they're only about the self-care and have the attitude that the loved one has to figure out everything for him or herself, or they're totally about helping their loved one. And as you probably know by now, either one alone just isn't enough. All focus on self could miss many opportunities to help your loved one become receptive to getting help, which we teach our families how to do. And all focus on helping the loved one could exhaust a family member so much that they're really too tired by the time the loved one is receptive to change. So we find it essential that families focus on both self-care and attention to the other. This chart is in your handouts folder. Take a look to see where you may need to pay more attention in your life, whether it's prayer, exercise, doctor's visits, or not taking things personally. This is where you will find your inner work along the path. Self-care helps with all of the first three steps, opening the way for a deeper receptivity to the work ahead. Another tool we use is based on Prochaska's 6 stages of change. These stages were developed to help people going through the process of stopping a behavior or breaking a habit to see where they are and how to move forward. I wrote our version of these stages specifically focused on what it looks like as a family member moves in the direction of family recovery. And they were checked and edited by Dr. Prochaska. So you can see the outline of this chart. You have a copy of this chart in your handouts. It's really, many families have told us that it's helped them tremendously. So there are 6 stages. We gave you the handout. You can see what's on the handout. It's what is the stage of change? Pre-contemplation, for instance, or denial, demoralization. What it might look like. What does pre-contemplation look like? Good question. You'll find that in your chart. Things like, it's not my problem. That's pre-contemplation. It is your problem. Or he just has to grow up when he's had 3 overdoses. Or my family, we're just so unlucky. This is so awful, and I don't know what I'm doing here. We don't have things like this happen to us. I don't see anything wrong with me. Or I can talk however I want to talk. These are pre-contemplation kind of statements because they don't recognize what's happening. They're just caught up in a lot of words. And it's a sign of some denial. When you get to the contemplate, and there's so much more in each stage. There's about, I think I have about 8 or 10 for each one. In contemplation, which is the stage of ambivalence, a person is beginning to see that their loved one may have a problem and that it's more than just their will. And they start to say, well, maybe he does need help. Maybe it isn't her fault. Maybe the treatment center is right. But we call this the yes, but stage because you go back and forth about it. I don't know. It's his fault. You're just not sure yet. You're not established in your understanding of what's really going on. And things you might say in contemplation about your family could be things like, maybe I could stop enabling. Maybe it is time to get some help for myself. Maybe if I face this, I can be of more help. Not so sure, but maybe. That's contemplation. Contemplation can last a long time unless there is something or someone that intervenes. That's true for the loved one. One of the big reasons why we want you to learn how to help your loved one about these stages, what helps at what stage for you and for your loved one, is because there are things you can say at certain stages to help your loved one move to the next. But we're not going to go there right now. Let's get back to you and your stages. Then there's the preparation stage, where you know it's time to get help for yourself and your loved one. You may hire an interventionist. You might set a date within the next 4 weeks or so to help your loved one. And you may set a date for your own help, getting a coach, going to meetings, joining Al-Anon, joining the Balm, going to any one of the programs you're hearing about. And at this point, you're saying things like, I've got to find someone to help me help my son or daughter. My daughter needs help, not enabling. Could you please help me figure out which treatment center is best? And about yourself, you could be saying, I can see it's time for me to stop enabling. Starting next week, if Sally asks me for money, I will not be giving it to her. I'm going to find some meetings starting next Friday. You can see the person is in preparation because they've set a date and it's not too far off in the future. The 4th stage is action. And this is where the person is working a recovery program. They're taking action to get help for their loved one. They're taking action to get help for themselves. They begin to live a recovery life. They stop enabling. They work on staying out of denial. They may be documenting, scripting, and sharing, and setting boundaries as needed. They may get their coach, or they may have a sponsor. And the kinds of things they say to their loved one are, no, Jim, I won't tell the treatment center you don't like your roommate. You need to deal with that. No, Sally, I won't get you out of jail unless it means going right into treatment. Another thing they might say is, I'm learning a lot about how to be loving to you. Or I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm not changing my mind. I know you can't believe that I don't believe you, but I believe my eyes and my ears, not your words. And things that they may say when a family member is in action. They may say things like, I heard the most interesting thing on the Daily Balm last week, or you should hear lesson 7 on boundary setting, or my Al-Anon meeting was so super last week. I'm really realizing how important it is to take care of myself, and I'm committed to it. So families, like loved ones, go in and out of these stages. It's not a straight path. If the family does stay in action for at least 6 months to a year, they then move into maintenance, and that's called the sticking with it stage. So they've been in action for at least 6 months to a year. They've formed a recovery community around himself or herself. She's committed to living life and family recovery. He's working the 12 steps and or Balm 7 steps as a way of life. They now have friends in family recovery. They're working with a coach on their own issues, and they document, script, share, and set boundaries as needed. The kinds of things they say to their loved one are, could we find a time to talk? They treat their loved one with love and respect, whether using or sober. They may have broken off ties if the behavior is too difficult to be a part of, and they may be considering ways to reconnect lovingly. They're enjoying a recovery lifestyle with other family members and friends, and they have a way of life that's fun and relaxed, even if things aren't better with the loved one. They're enjoying a recovery lifestyle. They have and this is about themselves. They have a way of life that's fun and relaxed. And they attend classes and meetings and support groups regularly. Of course, like the loved one, the family can have reoccurrences of their family use disorder. If they're in recycling, as Prochaska calls it, they may have regular slips that turn into a reoccurrence of enabling or in denial behavior. They believe the lies again. They make excuses. They're angry. They may get caught up in another addiction themselves and not be present to what's happening in the family. They could be screaming, yelling, begging, crying, coercing, negotiating, disappointed, embarrassed, or guilty. In fact, it sounds a lot like pre-contemplation, doesn't it? They may say things to their loved one like, what's wrong with you? You're worthless, just like your father. I can't believe this. And they may do and say things about themselves like, I don't go to meetings anymore. They don't help. I don't need help. It's not my problem. I'm miserable. If you had my life, you'd be miserable too. Some family members walk the loving path so thoroughly that it becomes imbibed within them. And we say that those family members have terminated their family disorder and they are complete. The old behaviors are gone and now they are loving and present as a way of life. They say things like, I hear you, I accept you, I love you. I may not agree with you, but I know you're on your own journey. They look for happy memories to share, even when the current life is difficult. And when they speak of their loved one, they say, she's doing it her way, and I understand that. I work on changing myself and loving others. We've seen the value of applying these stages of change to family recovery again and again. When I first wrote the stages of change for families, I shared the handout we gave you with Families on the Balm, and afterwards 4 new families called to ask if they could get help with moving their recovery forward. I thought I got this until I read this chart, one said. Another shared, I need help moving into preparation. I just can't make up my mind about whether or not it's my job to get involved. See where you are. You can refer to your handout to better understand these stages. And in my book, Balm the Loving Path, on page 260, you can find a self-assessment to help you see exactly where you are in your change process. And by the way, most people go through these stages 3 to 4 times before being able to stay in maintenance. And it's not a linear path, as I said before. The path is not always direct, but sticking with it regardless can make all the difference. So at this point, you may be wondering, what happened to my family? Today, my husband and I have been married for almost 34 years. Most of them lived happily in recovery. My husband did get into recovery soon after I lovingly observed his behaviors, I guess about 32 years ago. We had a joyful 16 years, and then both he and I relapsed on the loving path. His relapse lasted for 5, mine 4.5. Both at the beginning, way back when, 30-some years ago, and once I woke up to that relapse, I practiced the loving path, and in a relatively short amount of time, about 3 to 6 months altogether, he woke up to recovery again too. And thankfully, my own inner change went much further than that, improving my work life and my relationships with friends and family. Just as I was and continue to be my husband's best chance by walking the loving path, you too can be your loved one's best chance at recovery and enhance your life overall, regardless of your loved one's choices. Whenever I have been willing to do what I know I need to do to walk the loving path to family recovery, we enjoy the peace and happiness in our life together that I hope each and every one of you family members of individuals with use disorders will be able to enjoy in yours. As I stated earlier, I believe that the best chance an individual with a use disorder has to survive and thrive comes from the healthy involvement of their family in the recovery process. And living it and teaching it has only deepened that belief in me greatly over the years. Today, my method, Balm, Be a Loving Mirror, has become the choice for thousands of families walking the loving path, as well as the educational and coaching method behind the work of many coaches worldwide. If you would like to learn more about how to follow the loving path or how to become a coach, please contact us at 1-888-998-BALM, B-A-L-M. You can also email me at bbuncher@familyrecoveryresources.com or visit our website where you'll find my book at balmfamilyrecovery.com. Thank you so much for joining me today for this talk on the loving path to family recovery. And remember, be a loving mirror. Bye.